Hi there, my name is Alyssa Young, and I am a senior international relations and French major. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about women in French agriculture. So, often when we imagine French agriculture, we see this very idyllic French countryside with rolling hills and vineyards and dairy farms. And many of these beautiful farms that we see are family run. And in this, each person in the family has a specific role. So today I'm going to discuss the roles of women, both in the family farm and in the general agricultural sphere, and how the traditional roles that women take on within the farm have changed today. So first of all, I'd like to just talk about the specifics of the French family farm. So as I stated before, every person takes on a specific role on the farm, which for a very long time was the most common form of agriculture. The personal lives of the family members and the work of the farm, generally seen as a business, do not exist separately but coincide with one another. And in addition, as we have seen in the US, the model of the family farm has changed with modernization becoming more industrialized to feed a growing population. And a lot of times we see kind of the depletion of these family farms into much larger commercialized agribusiness farms. So Lise Saugère wrote a wonderful article discussing women in French agriculture in a very specific town in France. And they state that tasks that are constructed as feminine are devalued compared to which are constructed as masculine. So this exists not only in the family farm, but in other aspects of men and women working together in other workplaces, as we see with things such as the pay gap, as we may know from a lot of feminist and kind of pro women in the workplace movements that we have seen. So on the farm, women will generally assume all of the domestic roles, and their work exists within the sphere of the house. So if their work takes them outside, it is because it affects the house in some way. So here on this list, I've separated work that is customary for men to take on versus the work that women tend to take on. So as you see, this is work that is deemed light enough for women to take on. Often women are not seen as able to work the land or tend cows because it requires physical strength, which is why they tend smaller animals such as rabbits and chickens and pigs. There are also some variations in this, however, as women and children may help with harvesting or with maintenance if more labor is needed, and they may also tend to dairy cows. However, this has changed a lot since the transition of mechanization, because much more difficult work and more work-intensive work, such as harvesting and plowing, can be done with tractors. This has actually pushed women further into the home. So in my research, I found this article by Alice Barté that discusses this concept of the female exodus, which is a term that she coined, which references the rural exodus of the 19th century in the period of the Industrial Revolution. So during the rural exodus, many paysans or peasants and farmers moved from the countryside to the cities to work in factories as industry grew, hoping for better opportunities and social mobility. We saw this not just in France, but in almost all industrialized countries. This seems to be a trend of industrialization. So kind of a concept that's similar to this, during the 20th century, women began leaving their lives in agriculture and moving into industries not related to the farm, such as secretaries or factory workers, for example. So scholars Mundler and Remy describe this as a crisis for the French family farm, as 34% of former female farmers worked outside of the farm in 2000, in contrast to 4% in 1979. So not only are women moving away from agriculture, but they've also stopped marrying farmers. So a lot of times if a woman would leave and find work elsewhere, if she married a farmer, she would then become reintegrated into agriculture, and begin falling back into these traditional roles that the women would have on the family farm. And so a result of this now today is that a lot more male farmers are remaining celibate. There are a lot more single male farmers than there were before because there are not nearly as many women living and working on farms. So one of the main things that I discovered in this kind of research that I did was how others in France seem to view female farmers. So Lise Sauger, who I mentioned earlier, interviewed a number of male and female farmers to discuss their view of women's roles in agriculture. So for many, women who farm on their own are not seen as men or women, but are in this kind of in-between place. For a lot of them, if women choose to be single farming women who own their own farms, they are not seen seriously by male farmers and seem to take on masculine qualities. And a lot of times men stated that they would never marry a woman who farmed on her own, that she is too masculine. And one of the phrases that they use is that these women are not women, but they're half men. And a lot of times, if women are working by themselves, they're seen as too masculine. But if they work on a farm with their husband or with their father, they are only seen as participating in farm work, not actually doing the work themselves. And so, regardless of their position, their work is devalued. A lot of times these female farmers are then forced to give up their connection to femininity in order to support themselves in their farms. Sauger states that farmers often have this perception of single female farmers. Quote, if a woman farms without a man, then she is not a real woman, implying that she is a freak of nature to do men's work because she lacks feminine attributes, end quote. So in this, we see kind of this dichotomy of kind of this women really can't do the right thing in this. They're either participating or they're too masculine, kind of in this view of how others view female farmers. So this is kind of our historical view, kind of how people have been seen. And so I figured I would talk a little bit more about female farmers in France today. So in 2017, female farmers in France finally received paid maternity leave. And this is one of the most recent advancements in rights for les agricultrices, or the female farmers. So Sauger states that in many regions of France, there's been an increasing number of women who take over farms of their own and do work that men would usually be doing, like working the land or handling heavy equipment. And so this is really key in kind of advancing the role of women. So in France, according to La Fédération Nationale des Syndicats d'Exploitants Agricoles, or FNSEA, a very popular agricultural union, 25% of all farmers in France are women, as women who are the heads or partners of their own farm. That's the key. However, Alex N. and Wynne Wright believe that this is not necessarily a rise in women's agricultural engagement, but a much greater willingness in French society to view women's work as legitimate. So despite this participation, women in agriculture are still almost invisible. A sociologist, Sabrina Dahash, states that as a woman being, quote, marked by social and political legislative invisibility, end quote, their voices are often not heard in the spheres where their opinions are important, but unions today are helping to expand women's roles. So in an article in Libération, a French newspaper, they discussed in 2017 this new maternity leave, and also discussed the lives of female farmers with interviews from a few female farmers around France. So this is a quote from Cécile de Saint-Jean, or the director of the Union of Young Farmers, and I will read this quote in French, but the English translation is here on the PowerPoint for me. So C'est vraiment dommage, sur certains sujets, l'approche dans l'agriculture serait différente et pertinente pour nombre de dossiers. Le problème, c'est que les agricultrices doivent s'occuper des enfants. Elles n'ont pas toujours la possibilité de se libérer, alors que les hommes se réunissent plus facilement pour parler l'avenir de leur profession. So here, Cecile states that despite women being the owners of their own farms, they often still take on domestic roles in the house as well. So a lot of times these women are incredibly overworked. In addition to this, a farmer and mother of five daughters, Isabelle Courier, states in this article as well, être agricultrice, c'est concilier trois emplois de temps, sur l'exploitation à la maison et au bureau pour tout le paperasse. En fait, dans ce métier, tu ne t'arrêtes jamais, sauf qu'on est couché. So these women are taking on all of their roles. They're still maintaining these domestic roles, but they're also the heads of their own farms. So they almost have no time for themselves. But a lot of times these women feel happier that their voices are beginning to be heard, but they still feel displaced in their own industry. And so I decided to kind of add a reflection on American agriculture. I grew up in Montana, and I grew up on a cattle ranch. And I did 4-H for 12 years, so I have had my own experiences being around agriculture in the US, and having my mother and my grandmother and a lot of my female family members calling themselves female farmers. So today, women make up 36% of farmers in the United States as of 2017, according to the USDA census. This is a 27% increase between 2012 to 2017. And 38% of these farms have a female as the primary producer, who makes the majority of the decisions. So one thing that I thought was really interesting, in Alaska, women make up 47% of all farmers, which has increased by 56% from 2012 to 2017. In the US, or in Alaska, I guess, women also own more small farms than men at 50.3%. And today, women are able to receive better grants and loans as the USDA's Farm Service Agency reserves loan money for underrepresented groups and beginning farmers. So this includes women and people of color and a lot of other kind of underrepresented groups in agriculture. But American women still face a number of gender barriers. So actually, a number of women from Montana sued the USDA for gender discrimination in its farm loan programs. And so we still kind of see this sort of discrimination against women in agriculture, kind of that it's not seen as their place. And so I thought I would share a little bit more of my own personal experiences as a female farmer. In my own experiences, I have never truly experienced this concept that because a farmer is a woman, she can't do it. My experience has always been that if you can do the work, it doesn't matter your gender. We all participate equally in the work. We all work cows. We all have equal responsibility of taking care of the land, and that has never been a problem. And so I am unsure if that is just my own experience, or if that is an experience of many other female farmers in America. The culture is a little bit different in, especially Western ranching and farming culture is much different than kind of French agricultural culture, with the aspect of kind of homesteading and coming here and making your own and kind of surviving on your own. And so I feel like that's probably one of the biggest differences in that aspect of culture. And so if anyone who is watching this has any other stories to share, I would absolutely love to hear them. So in conclusion, I feel that women have really been taken on as like this domestic role, and I just feel that it is changing today, but there is still quite a bit of work to be done for female farmers to still feel comfortable and feel heard in their industry. And I would love feedback, so thank you for listening. And if you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much.